The research by Nicholas Bloom and John van Reenen and their collaborators showed the effect of differences in management on productivity. The Singapore government commissioned a similar study modeled on the Bloom and van Reenen methodology of Singapore manufacturers. Let's discuss the results of the study. Before discussing the details of the Bloom van Reenen style study in Singapore, let me motivate by quoting a press statement by the NTUC. The NTUC in Singapore is the National Trades Union Congress. It's the umbrella body representing workers through unions. In 2015, the NTUC complained that manufacturers were not paying attention to productivity. The unions are concerned because less productive manufacturers would be more likely to be competed out of their business and lay off their workers. And this comment by NTUC was in the context of 2,200 workers being retrenched in the year before, 2014. NTUC's remark was quite trenchant. They said, "Our sense is that they," meaning managers, "know why they need to increase productivity, but they just do not know how." It is really amazing that the unions lecturing management on how to improve. The study commissioned by the Singapore government of management practices in manufacturing industries applied the Bloom and van Reenen scorecard of management, which assess management on 4 dimensions: the human resources practices, operations management practices, whether they're engaged in monitoring and continuous improvement, and 4th, whether they set targets and track the outcomes. So let's see how business manufacturers in Singapore performed on these 4 dimensions which make up the management scorecard. US multinationals scored the best with a score of 3.6, followed by Australian multinationals with a score of 3.28, European multinationals slightly behind, Singaporean multinationals slightly behind, and then a discrete drop to Asian multinationals and an even bigger drop to non-multinationals. Non-multinationals would be Singapore exclusive companies operating just in Singapore. The researchers also divided the sample by the ownership of the business. Listed companies, that is on stock exchanges with public diversified shareholders, scored the highest, 3.25. Slightly behind were companies not listed but with dispersed shareholders, 3.19. Then a discrete drop to government-owned companies, 2.89. Those owned by private individuals, that is non-dispersed, 1 or 2 controlling shares owned by 1 or 2 individuals, 2.86. And then another discrete drop to family-owned companies, 2.64. And right at the bottom, businesses continue to be owned and run by their founders, 2.55. The researchers divided the sample in a third way, which was by industry. The highest scoring firms were in biomedical, 3.56. Discretely lower those in chemicals, manufacturers of chemicals, 3.22. Closely followed by electronics, 3.18. Then precision engineering, 3.07. And then a discrete drop to the largest group with an N of 207, all others not otherwise classified, and almost the same transport, N with 50. with N of 50 with a score of 2.83. The study of the Singapore companies shows that 3 factors seem to affect the quality of management practices. Multinationals do better than purely domestic-focused companies. Publicly listed companies do better than others. And there was considerable variation by industry, with biomedical and chemical manufacturers at the top, and general, not classified, and transport manufacturers at the bottom. So if I were to ask you to estimate using a regression, what are the factors that affect the management scorecard of Singapore businesses? What explanatory variables would you include? And what are the signs of the coefficients that you would expect? A related question is, are the inferences that you can draw from this regression causal?